Prosecutor Scott then proceeded to read to Ali and the jury an email that he had sent her on April 22, 2008, where he begged Leanne to take him back so that they could start a new life together. It was a long, emotional letter with Ali declaring his love for her and how he can't live without her. Ali began crying as the prosecutor continued to read his letter to Leanne, as did the young courtroom clerk. After finishing the letter, the prosecutor asked Ali the reason why he wrote the letter. He testified that Leanne felt that he was not there enough for her, especially now when she needed him the most. Ali testified that no way in hell would he let her go and that he was not going to let that happen. My father, who was sitting in the front row behind and to the left of me, and my defense attorneys also started getting emotional. My attorneys had to remind him to stay quiet or leave the courtroom. My father complied and remained quiet. The prosecutor then proceeded by reading and providing copies of the letter to Ali and the jury that my divorce lawyer, Ms. Cornelia McCulshy, had sent to Leanne on April 15, 2008. The prosecutor did the same with the emails and letters Leanne had sent to her own divorce lawyer, Ms. Aileen Thompson, from the Gowling, LaFleur, and Henderson law firm. The prosecutor then read the emails that Leanne had sent to Ali so that he could proofread them. In the first email that the prosecutor read, Leanne listed the reasons why she hated my mother. In the second email, Leanne wrote that she always puts the needs of the children ahead of her personal and professional needs. In the third email, Leanne wrote that I am a reckless driver. In the fourth email, Leanne wrote that I do not feed the children healthy meals and that I take them to McDonald's every Saturday. In the fifth email, Leanne admitted to having a boyfriend. In the sixth email, Leanne admitted having had suffered postpartum depression in 2000 but waited until late 2001 to seek treatment. In her seventh and last email, Leanne complained that I did not let our daughter do her science project on her own, to which Ali replied, "Do not worry, just start video recording for evidence." Ali resumed his testimony in front of the jury that he knew Leanne's intentions about getting custody of the children before Leanne had her lawyer put it down in writing. Ali admitted that he had not seen the document subpoenaed by the judge at my lawyer's request to summon her to family court on July 8, 2008. Ali insisted that Leanne was happy and excited that things were moving forward with the divorce. Ali admitted that he helped Leanne prepare and write the draft copy of allegations about me, which were to be given to Leanne's lawyer. The allegations included that I had spent my money on prostitutes and strippers, that I had a temper as proven by my actions, like trying to drive the car over my mother and shaking our daughter when she was a young child, and being racist. In another email to Leanne from Ali, dated June 6, 2008, at 8:30 a.m., Ali promised to put Leanne ahead of his job and career. He agreed to her list of demands to ask for a raise in salary, an increase of at least 14.25%, and more dividends of the company. These were things that Ali would have gotten if he had stayed with his previous employer, Alcatel-Lucent, another software company located on the west side of the city. Ali testified that yielding to her demands was a way to compensate Leanne for not being there for her during the divorce, especially since he was her only support in Ottawa. Ali admitted that Leanne did not have a lot of close friends in the area. Ali also admitted that he saw her later that day and that Leanne was in good spirits. Ali also saw her again on Saturday after she had phoned him to take her and our son to Andrew Hayden Park, where our son had wet his T-shirt and consequently needed to be replaced. They went to the nearest place where they could replace it, Bayshore Shopping Mall. Afterwards, they went to Champlain Lookout, located across the Ottawa River in Gatineau Park, Quebec. They returned home after our daughter had phoned Leanne on her cell phone. Ali testified that he knew that Leanne had canceled her appointment at the beauty salon. He claimed that she had always put the children ahead of her own personal needs. Ali stated that Leanne had made plans to get her own place that was big enough for the children to be with her, which he insisted was going to be 50% of the time. Ali told the court that he would eventually move in with her. The last thing that the prosecutor asked Ali during her questioning in court was if the crucifix and broken chain which she presented to Ali in a transparent bag to see belonged to Leanne. Ali confirmed that the crucifix and broken chain were not hers. The judge adjourned the trial for the morning recess and excused Ali and the jury. Before the judge left the courtroom, she wanted to discuss with the attorneys the issue of a written request submitted by the jury earlier in the day. In their letter, the jury had asked for the legal definition of second-degree murder. I was unnerved by their question, especially when the trial was not even halfway over. For me, this meant that the jury was already inclined to wrongfully convict me again. Predispositions. My defense attorneys believed and thought otherwise. They said that the jury did not see the case as a criminal one, and that they were beginning to wonder why they were summoned by the prosecutor to judge and convict me for murder. The three attorneys concurred that it was too early to reply to their question and that it was best for the judge to tell the jury to wait until after the closing arguments had been presented to them by the attorneys. The judge agreed and instructed the jury accordingly when they had returned from recess. During the cross-examination by my defense attorney, Howard, Ali agreed that his perception of me was entirely derived via Leanne, since he had never had any direct contact with me. Ali admitted that Leanne had never complained to him that I had been violent with her. He also admitted that our daughter had gone to Vietnamese school and spoke to Leanne in Vietnamese. Ali admitted that Leanne's money was in accounts bearing her name only. He claimed that he did not know if she was afraid to lose her money during or after the divorce. Ali agreed with Howard that Leanne had never told him that she needed him before April, May, or June of 2008. Ali tried to deny Howard's claim during his testimony that they had sexual relations in the matrimonial bed in my apartment and insisted that they went to his home for sex, but Howard again was able to reveal the truth by reading out Ali's testimony to police that they could never go to his apartment for sex because although he lived alone, his home was a mess since he lived like a pig. Ali then admitted that he would also be in my apartment whenever Leanne played hooky and called in sick from work. Ali reiterated that Leanne left me and our daughter in 2001 for 3 days to be with him. Ali also reiterated that he had gone to Las Vegas with Leanne and our daughter to give me a break from our daughter. Ali testified that he used to pick our daughter up from her daycare with Leanne, but stopped doing so as she became older to avoid confusing her about having two fathers. He reiterated that he would visit Leanne at home when she was on maternity leave with our son. Ali testified that Leanne was happy with the arrangement of being my wife and mother to our children while keeping Ali as her second husband. Ali insisted that he was also happy with that arrangement. Ali testified that his new job was increasingly taking away the time that he had usually reserved to be with her and that this started to anger her. Ali testified that it was his understanding not to enter and break up the family or the marriage between Leanne and me, although he had testified that he had wished that she would eventually leave me to be with him. Ali admitted that she was happy with Leanne's decision to enter marriage with me since he saw it as his opportunity to finally have her for himself after having waited around 14 years. Ali testified, Jimmy already had her for all of this time, now it's my turn. Ali admitted that he liked his time alone and at work since it kept him busy when he was not with Leanne. Howard was able to squeeze the truth out of Ali about Leanne's true character. Ali confirmed in court that Leanne had a habit of not talking to people for days or weeks when she was angry with them. Ali admitted during his testimony that Leanne was not someone to be trifled with, and that although she was petite in stature, she was very domineering and controlling. At first, Ali denied the power imbalance in their 15-year extramarital relationship, insisting that it was divided 60-40 in her favor. Howard was able to discredit Ali's testimony about the power balance by fooling him into revealing the truth through examples of the decision-making dynamics in their relationship, but also by getting him to admit to previous statements which he gave to police after Leanne's death and his previous testimonies at the pretrial in October 2009 and first jury trial in October 2010. Ali specifically admitted to begging Leanne not to end their 15-year relationship and giving in to her demands to ask his employer for a 15% raise, an unreasonable request that was most likely going to get him fired since he had just started working for his new employer only 7 weeks earlier. Despite the irrationality of the request, Ali did proceed and ask his employer for the 15% raise in an email which he blind carbon copied to Leanne as proof of his request. Although Ali denied during his testimony today that Leanne's demands had more to do with exercising her control over him and had less to do about money. Howard read his statement to the police on June 9, 2008, where he admitted that Leanne's demands were indeed about controlling him, which he did not object to because he loved her and would have done everything for her, and proving to Leanne that she was the most important person in his life. Ali had told police that Leanne's need to be in control was her nature. Moreover, Howard provided the jury with copies of a letter that Ali had written for Leanne begging to take him back after she ended their relationship the previous week. His letter was filled with expressions of his undying love for her and his agreement to a long list of her demands, which included opening a joint bank account where he would have his employer deposit his salary so she could have immediate and direct access to his pay instead of waiting for him to hand it over to her. The time he was to pick her up from work, paying the down payment for a condominium that she wanted, and having him brush his teeth twice a day. Ali continued to deny that Leanne was dominating him, but admitted that he understood that Leanne wore the pants in her marriage with me. Ali testified that her decision to spend the night with him on April 4, 2008 was a sign to him that she was ending her marriage with me. Leanne had never vocalized any feelings or plans to leave me before April 4, 2008. Ali reiterated that Leanne was crying on April 4th and April 5th of 2008, even when they had breakfast at Cora's on the morning of the 5th. She was depressed and wanted to go and get our son. Ali again admitted that he was waiting in his car in the parking lot and had only come to the apartment after Leanne had phoned him on his cell phone. Ali confirmed that Leanne did not find the passports after looking for them in their usual location, in the briefcase in the bedroom. Ali reiterated that I did not yell or scream when I returned to the apartment with Constable DiNardo. Ali confirmed that everybody was acting civil, calm, and nonviolently, and that he left Leanne and the children with me alone in the apartment. Ali testified that he did not remember if he had seen Leanne the next day, Sunday, April 6, 2008, but that he did see her soon thereafter. Amnesia. Ali admitted in front of the jury that neither he nor Leanne expected me to phone the police, and that they were very upset about that. Leanne in particular did not want the police involved. Ali testified that Leanne was really surprised that I had my lawyer subpoena her to go to court for the divorce. Leanne and Ali wanted to settle everything between ourselves. They did not want others involved with deciding the custody arrangements of the children. As I sat and heard Ali admit this in front of the jury, I was thinking to myself, will the jury see and understand that I was being outnumbered by Leanne and Ali, who clearly and intentionally were going to overpower me to get the child custody arrangements that they wanted, our daughter with me and our son with them, as opposed to the arrangement that was best for both children? The first jury could not or did not want to see it that way, and consequently believed and sided with Ali, Prosecutor Scott, and the Ottawa police. Ali continued his testimony by stating that they thought that I was blocking them from getting what they wanted by taking the initiative and assuming more control of the situation. Ali admitted that my preemptive response really upset Leanne. Neither Leanne nor Ali felt that my actions were appropriate, but they were going to proceed with the lawyers in the courts since they no longer had any choice. Ali was not as supportive as Leanne wanted him to be since the time after I had filed for divorce, and was the reason why she became very angry with him and ended her relationship with him. He told the jury that Leanne rarely cried about anything, but in the last week of her life, she needed Ali's shoulder to cry on. She had become very depressed during that time and had even written a draft letter, although it was never made clear at the trial who the intended recipient was, if there was any, expressing her regrets over the things that she did and did not do as a wife and mother, especially during the previous 10 years. Leanne wrote that she was afraid to lose everything, including the children. She wondered if she made the right decision about pursuing the divorce. She had hated herself for becoming increasingly vain and demanding. I was very surprised when I heard her letter being read in court, not only because it was never shown to me by my previous defense attorneys or admitted as evidence during my first trial, but because this was the first time in the 18 years that I had known Leanne that I had ever heard her regret anything that she has said or done. Leanne had always said that she never regretted anything in her life, which was the main reason why she never apologized or said I'm sorry to anyone. It was odd to hear Leanne admit regret, particularly from beyond the grave. Spooky. Nevertheless, Ali defended the contents of her letter, testifying that she was very hard on herself in the letter. Ali also confirmed that Leanne indeed feared that she was going to lose everything, including her money and her son, and that he was going to help her not lose either. In addition, Ali confirmed, after having read in court the email that was sent to him by Leanne on May 27, 2008, that Leanne wanted to pick up the children from their daycares before I did, simply to piss off Jimmy. In the last 4 days of May 2008, Leanne did not speak to Ali after she had told him that their relationship was over. After Ali won her back, he admitted to helping her snoop for any dirt, including in my home computer while I was away from home, that could be used against me during the 5 weeks leading to our first day in family court on July 8, 2008. Unlike the time he testified during my first jury trial, Ali did not admit at my retrial that he was also helping Leanne fabricate dirty activities like planting child pornography photos and videos onto the hard drive of my home computer to have me arrested, or at the very least have proof that I was a danger to the children and consequently should be kept away from them. Slander. Ali testified that Leanne felt that something had to be done because she felt that she was alienated from our daughter and that I had everything to do with it. This time, Ali testified that he did not remember if he managed to look inside my computer hard drive. Perjury. Ali also insisted that he did not know anything about Leanne's meeting with Miss Singh on June 7, 2008. After I heard Ali deny having any knowledge about the meeting between Leanne and Ms. Singh, I wondered if the jury would believe him. Would they realize that if our son was not with his mother during her meeting with his school director, nor was our son with me and his sister, then who was with our son on this Saturday morning? Answer: Ali. Ali ended his testimony with my defense attorney by telling the jury that the night of June 7, 2008 ended on a sour note since she did not reply to his text messages after he had driven her and our son back home from their outing together. Before being excused, Ali testified that he did not know why Leanne was giving him the electronic silent treatment, nor did he understand why Leanne did not respond to his text messages or phone calls the next morning on June 8th until he discovered the tragic news. Although it was a long day in court, the prosecutor wanted to summon one more witness before having the judge adjourn for the day. The next witness to testify in front of the jury was Miss Tikia Mirziotis, a Greek-Canadian parishioner from my church who was also the mother of one of the Sunday school teachers. Ms. Mirziotis testified that she attended the Greek Orthodox Church on June 8, 2008 for Sunday service at 10:15 a.m. and that she typically stayed there until about 12:30 p.m. She testified that communion was usually around 11:15 a.m. Ms. Mirziotis admitted that she only knew me as a parishioner who engaged in small talk, and that I usually sat on the left side of the church with my son, who was always quiet and well-behaved, and in fact both children were well-behaved, from what she observed every Sunday. She testified that she admired me because most of the other children at church were not as quiet or well-behaved as mine, especially considering that I was for the most part alone with them. Ms. Merziotis testified that she had seen the children's mother once at the church's Christmas party, either in 2004 or 2005. She testified that she saw me on June 8, 2008 at the church with big sunglasses and makeup on with the children. Ms. Merziotis ended her testimony by stating that I did not speak to her that day. It did not take long for the journalist to post on the Internet and print in the newspapers Ali's testimony in court. The headlines in the Ottawa Sun read, "Murder Trial Hears from Dead Wife's Lover," in large letters above a photo of me where I posed for the reporter photographer on October 28, 2010, outside the rear entrance of the courthouse at the request of the previous Ottawa Sun reporter Megan Gillis. Meanwhile, the other local newspaper, the Ottawa Citizen, had the following headline, "Ottawa homicide victim portrayed as cold, controlling woman." The photo that the Ottawa Citizen had used for the story was the photo that they had almost always used, which was given to them by the prosecutor and or the police. The photo that our daughter had taken of me and Leanne sitting on a bench in August 2007 at the Acropolis in Athens. It is ironic that the editors of the newspaper at the Ottawa Citizen had used one of our vacation photos from Athens because it was one of Leanne's favorite photos of herself. She loved the way that she looked like Angelina Jolie in her expensive designer sunglasses. Gucci. Coincidentally, Angelina Jolie played the role of Queen Olympias, wife of King Philip of Macedonia and the mother of their famous son Alexander the Great, in the Hollywood movie directed by Oliver Stone in 2004. Generally speaking, I am not a fan of Angelina Jolie, not her acting nor her personal life, but I must admit that she was the perfect actress for the role of Olympias. A crazy, arrogant, narcissistic, jealous, greedy, and power-hungry woman with a hot temper and little scruples, who wanted people to believe that she was chosen by the mythical Greek god Zeus to bear his child, Alexander the Great. After the assassination of King Philip, Olympias also ordered the execution of King Philip's second wife and their child to ensure that her own son, Alexander, be heir to the throne so that she can derive wealth and power through him. She also bore King Philip a daughter, but she hardly paid attention to her. Hey, wait a minute. Why does that sound familiar? As I laid in bed that night, I reflected on what Ali had testified in court earlier that day, and specifically how he and Leanne did not expect me to put up any resistance to them. Of course, I already knew that this was something that they had never expected me to do. Leanne and Ali always expected me to keep the peace at all costs and to sacrifice and relinquish all my rights for the greater good of the children. Unsurprisingly, they failed to see and understand that their actions countered the greater good of the children, mostly because the children were seen as the property of Leanne since she was their birth mother. They did not care about the rights of the children to live safely at home, or their rights to remain in the country of their birth, or even their rights to speak their minds to a neutral third party like a judge or family evaluator. What I did find surprising is that although the attempted abduction of my son by Leanne and Ali because of his association with her was wrong, the police, judges, lawyers, social workers, the news and social media, and the jury at my first criminal trial, composed of ordinary people in Ottawa and by extension the province of Ontario, feel that Leanne had the social right, if not the legal right, and from what I have seen, read, and heard, the social rights of a woman takes precedent over legal ones in the central provinces of Ontario and Quebec, to do what she wanted to me and our children in our own home, even if our safety is compromised. I draw the line when it comes to the safety of our children. These thoughts and beliefs were not confined to the female population. Men were just as likely to support Leanne's actions either as a result of fear of appearing misogynistic and politically incorrect or due to being brainwashed and conditioned to believe by society and by their mothers that a woman must be unconditionally supported to compensate for past injustices inflicted by the previous generations. In the specific case of Ali, his unconditional support can be explained rather easily. In his desperation to receive the love and attention that he was unable to obtain from his mother, since she was admitted and kept in a psychiatric facility when Ali was still a child, he illogically followed and irrationally obeyed the instructions from the first woman who had given him attention in his early years of adulthood. It is now November 26, 2014, the day that Prosecutor Scott has scheduled my daughter to testify in court and use her testimony to convince a jury to reconvict me of murder. Unlike my previous defense attorneys, Patrick McCann and John Hale, my current attorneys were not going to treat my daughter as a victim, which was also the way that the prosecutor was presenting her as, but as a real witness of an alleged incident. There were two main ways that my attorney Oliver was going to achieve that. The first way is to reduce and even remove what I refer to as the Shirley Temple factor, the child cuteness features that the prosecutor relied on 4 years earlier to win over the support of past judges and the first jury. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Shirley Temple, she was a child actress in the 1930s who used her cuteness and appealing personality to supplement her singing and dancing talents to become a Hollywood star and an international sensation that no other child has ever accomplished. Most people know her from her two famous songs, On the Good Ship Lollipop from the 1934 movie Bright Eyes and Animal Crackers in My Soup from the 1935 film Curly Top. Shirley Temple had in fact just died 9 months earlier in California. My daughter knew who Shirley Temple was because my mother had bought her Shirley Temple's entire movie collection on DVD for my daughter's 6th birthday. The irony was that both my daughter and Shirley Temple had curly locks of hair, and that at my first jury trial. My daughter was roughly the same age as Shirley Temple at the end of her acting career. My attorney Oliver was going to be more assertive with her at my retrial, especially since she was no longer a little girl of 9 or 10, but a young adolescent of 14. With the previous recordings of my daughter's testimony from 2008 and 2009, my attorneys were going to confine the recordings to the pertinent information related to the murder allegations and exclude the showing of irrelevant recorded conversations that were strategically compiled and used by Sergeant Patrick, the investigating police officer, and Prosecutor Scott to make the judges and jurors fall in love with her. They had even given my daughter a lollipop to suck on while she was interrogated by Sergeant Patrick on June 25, 2009, to make her look even cuter on the video recording. Crafty. Secondly, Oliver was going to treat her the way that he and Howard had treated every other person who had testified at my retrial, by pushing them to either admit the truth or at least acknowledge that they were wrong in what they saw, heard, or believed. Prosecutor Scott was already nervous with the notion of having Oliver and Howard as my defense attorneys and immediately requested the judge to permit her to submit the entire transcripts of my daughter's previous testimonies, likely to capture the cute conversations between my daughter and Sergeant Patrick during the police interrogation. My attorneys fought against submitting them to the jury and succeeded. My lawyers also requested that a French translator be summoned to the courtroom and be available to translate at any time clarification was needed from my daughter, whose second language is French, with Greek being her first. My daughter's English was deemed good enough to use in court during her testimony. Like at my preliminary hearing and my first jury trial, my daughter would be testifying in another room and would only be seen by the judge, the jury, me, and everyone else in the courtroom via a video monitor. My attorney Oliver, Prosecutor Scott, and a social worker were the only ones present in the video conferencing room with my daughter. This arrangement was standard procedure for child witnesses testifying in court. Before my daughter testified in person via video, she and everyone else were made to watch the recording of the police interrogation conducted on June 25, 2009. In the recording, she told Sergeant Patrick that Mommy and Daddy were fighting over money. Mommy said that Daddy took or was taking her money. Mommy died after Daddy covered Mommy's mouth. We then went to church, then came back home. I saw Daddy call 911. My brother and I were taken away by the ambulance people. We then went to eat at McDonald's. In the recorded police interrogation, Sergeant Patrick asked her to start her story from the beginning. My daughter replied, Mommy did not want to talk to Daddy before the day she died. My brother and I were watching Thomas the Tank Engine on television while Mommy and Daddy were yelling. Then they started fighting, pushing each other onto the floor, punching, hitting, and kicking. Mommy told me to call the police or get the neighbors, but I did not because I was afraid and too shy to do it. Mommy was on her back and Daddy was on top of her. Then he covered her mouth and nose, and then... Wait, it was only her mouth that was covered, not her nose, just her mouth, and then she died. Daddy told me that he knew that she was dead because he used to work in a hospital in that tall building in Montreal on the way to Grandma's house. I do not remember how long that he covered her mouth. I didn't see everything. I do not know why she stopped breathing. In the video recording, Sergeant Patrick asked her again to back up and not to leave anything out from the story. My daughter replied, I saw Mommy dig her nails into Daddy's genital parts, and I think that she did that while she was on her back. I saw Mommy scratch Daddy's face. The fight started after I was in the shower. I saw Mommy close her eyes and go to sleep because she could not breathe. Daddy told me that I can cry if I wanted to. My brother was watching Thomas the Train in Greek, but the TV was on its side. I made cookies the night before for my friends at church. Daddy gave me presents after church, some of them for Christmas in case I was away from him for a long time in jail. Daddy told me that he loves me and will miss me very much. I did not want to cry about my mother, but I was still a little sad. Daddy wanted us to be happy, so he gave us presents. Hannah Montana and High School Musical for me, and Thomas the Train for my brother. He told me to pack my and my brother's clothes, toys, and DVDs. Daddy gave me a big hug before he left. In the video, Sergeant Patrick pressed my daughter again to tell more of the story. Even after my attorneys had reduced the showing of irrelevant interactions between the investigator and my daughter, it was still very apparent that he did everything to befriend her and bond with her by saying that he knows how to count in Japanese, which he learned as a boy when he was taking classes in martial arts. My daughter resumed her interview and told him that her mother was teaching her how to use the phone to call police many times before while they were sleeping together in her and her brother's bedroom. She told him that she does not remember ever seeing her parents fight or argue before. She also said that her mommy had a boyfriend, but she did not remember his name. But her daddy did not have a girlfriend. She ended her interrogation by saying that her mommy and daddy were going to live apart in different homes. As the video ended, I saw my daughter, who was sitting in the next room via the video conference screen, looking stressed and squeezing her red ball in her hand. It was obvious from her face that she did not want to see the video recording of the police interrogation and that she did not want to be there, but she still tried to remain calm and positive. I knew exactly what she felt because I felt the same way. Unfortunately, my daughter's day in court had just begun. She now had to answer the prosecutor's questions about June 8, 2008, but at least she had another 30 minutes of reprieve because of the morning break. After the morning break, my daughter confirmed that we were all in the living room on June 8, 2008, and that she and her younger brother were safe. The prosecutor then asked her to demonstrate how her father covered her mother's mouth and nose on the day that her mother died. My daughter responded by covering her nose and mouth with her hand. The prosecutor then asked a long series of questions, one after the other. Some of them included, when and how did your mother stop breathing? How did the television fall down? My daughter replied that it fell down due to the shaking caused by our fighting and that her brother ran closer to the TV so he could continue to watch Thomas the Train. Who started the fight? She answered that she saw her father push her mother onto the floor and did not get back up. Did your mom die on her front or on her back? She replied that her mom died on her back. And why did your father bring the rug into the bedroom? She answered that she did not know because her father did not tell her. After the prosecutor had ended her examination, the judge adjourned the court for lunch. My father and I had to wait in the courtroom to make sure that we would not accidentally encounter my daughter outside. My father was furious at how well they had trained my daughter how to lie in court. He told me that her testimony was unnatural and rehearsed to near perfection. While we waited inside, the prosecutor returned to the courtroom to get her belongings. I overheard her talk to Sergeant McIntosh about Guy Turcotte, the cardiologist in Quebec who was criminally absolved for murder at his first criminal trial in 2011, but was waiting to be tried again in front of another jury after the verdict was overturned by the Court of Appeal in Quebec. He was released on bail while waiting to go to court again for murdering his 2 young children in 2009, his 5-year-old son and his 3-year-old daughter. Prosecutor Scott was unhappy about his release from custody and did not feel that the cardiologist should be out on bail and living with his elderly parents despite having satisfied the 3 legal conditions for being released. Scott and other people throughout Quebec felt that the cardiologist was a sadistic manipulator who stabbed his children 47 times to retaliate against his wife, also a physician, after he had discovered that she was unfaithful and in an adulterous sexual relationship in their home while he was working at the hospital. The jury at his first trial found him not criminally responsible for killing their young children, and he was ordered by a judge to spend 18 months in a psychiatric hospital. He was rearrested after the verdict was overturned by the Court of Appeal in the autumn of 2013, but was granted bail a year later and was scheduled for a retrial in 2015. I found it disturbing that Prosecutor Scott was essentially grouping me and the Quebec cardiologist into the same category, especially since the circumstances between the two of us were dramatically different. Unlike the cardiologist, I was protecting my children from their mother and even seeking help to do so. I never got into a jealous rage over my wife's extramarital affair, and I was the one who was injured, not our children. How can Prosecutor Scott argue that both the Quebec cardiologist and I deserve to be imprisoned for life behind bars? Mind-boggling. During my daughter's cross-examination with Oliver, she admitted that she spoke to a female police officer on June 8, 2008. Records show that the police officer was Allison Cookson. At that time, my daughter had told Constable Cookson that Daddy went to work and Mommy went shopping. Daddy came back and drove her and her brother to the police station. In court today, she admitted that she fabricated the story because she was scared and shy and that she did not want to tell anyone what had happened. She agreed with Oliver that she did not say anything to anyone at that time when her memory was still fresh. Oliver reviewed additional records that showed that on July 24, 2008, Sergeant Patrick and Anik Viau, the social worker from the Children's Aid Society, came to visit my daughter at her foster mother's home so that they could talk to her about her mother's death over 2 weeks ago. My daughter spoke to them at that time because she was less shy. Her conversation with them was recorded. She told them repeatedly that she did not remember how her mother died or how her father got his boo-boos in his injuries. She could not remember the details. My daughter admitted to Oliver that her memory was not good on that day. Oliver then proceeded with reviewing the transcripts of my daughter's testimony during the preliminary hearing on October 27, 2009. She testified on October 27, 2009, that she did not remember a lot of things, that she needed time to think about them. Oliver then proceeded to other records and reviewed them with my daughter. He started with the sessions that she had with her unlicensed psychologist and hypnotherapist, Myrna Ladouceur. which occurred weekly between November 3rd and November 20th, 2008, to try and help her remember whether her mother died on her back or on her stomach. Shortly after, she began telling Joanne, her foster mother, what she remembered. She continued seeing Myrna weekly, sometimes alone, sometimes with a social worker, either Anik Viau or Tanya Kingsbury. In court today, my daughter admitted that before starting her sessions with Myrna, she did not remember the entire story of what had happened on June 8, 2008. When she was asked about her relationship with Sergeant Patrick by Oliver, my daughter replied that he was always nice and friendly to her. Oliver replied, "You have to be nice with Sergeant Patrick because he knows martial arts." My daughter testified in court today that her memory got better since 2008, especially starting in 2010 when the video of her interrogation at the police station helped jog her memory. Oliver then asked her for clarification about the issue regarding the covering of her mother's nose and mouth. He pointed out that on the police video she stated that her father had covered her mother's mouth. When he asked her again in court today, she insisted that her father covered both her nose and mouth. She agreed that she told two different stories, but said that she was always telling the truth. She had first told her foster mother in early November 2008 about the incident on June 8, 2008. She admitted that she had told the police stories on the evening of June 8, 2008. She also admitted in court today that she did not remember at that time how her mother got onto the floor or if her father covered her nose and or mouth. She admitted that she did not see the whole fight. She only started to remember afterwards with the help of Myrna. My daughter then admitted to Oliver that she was pressured by the police and social workers as recently as 2 weeks ago to remember things that she did not remember. After my father and I had heard my daughter admit this in court for the first time, we began to understand why Ottawa Police Sergeant Patrick decided to schedule his 2 weeks of vacation during this time. We also noticed that neither Anik Viau nor Tanya Kingsbury from the Children's Aid Society of Ottawa were present at my retrial. Convenient. Prosecutor Scott objected to Oliver's question, pointing out that on June 29, 2008, that my daughter told her foster mother that she remembered seeing her mother lying down on the living room floor on the rug. Oliver agreed to be more specific with his questions about June 8, 2008. Oliver asked my daughter if she remembered who started the argument on June 8, 2008. She replied that she did not remember, but after reviewing the transcript of her testimony on October 27, 2009, at the preliminary hearing, she agreed that it was true that her mother started the fight because her mother was upset. She testified that day that she did not recall if her father was calm on June 8, 2008, but he was usually a calm person. She admitted that she saw Myrna until October 2010, the time of the first jury trial. Oliver reviewed statements that my daughter made and was documented since June 2009. On June 14, 2009, she told Myrna that she knew that her mother was dead, but that she did not know how she died. On June 19, 2009, she told Myrna that she knew that her mother had died on the living room floor and that her mother was not crying. She was in the living room with her brother when it happened, but told Myrna that she did not know why it happened. On June 26, 2009, she told Myrna that she did not know what happened because she was not looking and that her father told her that her mother was dead. Oliver noted that there were 2 sessions in November 2008 where her sessions with Myrna were not documented. After those 2 undocumented sessions, Myrna told her that she needed to reach deep into her subconscious to remember. Her memories came back at night while sleeping. She began to have several dreams about what had happened, including seeing her father on top of her mother with her hand over her mouth. She started telling her foster mother of the dreams and nightmares. Her memories kept getting better after waking up. She admitted that it was increasingly difficult to remember what had actually happened after the dreams and nightmares. She remembered some things, but not others, although a lot of it came back after November 2008. She remembered the hand over the mouth, but remained unsure about the nose. She was almost certain that she saw the hand over the nose on June 8, 2008, but was not ready to talk about it until she remembered it again after November 2008. Oliver pointed out that what my daughter testified in court those 2 hours contradicted what she had told other people before that day. My daughter became increasingly anxious and stressed as Oliver had made this assertion. I noticed via the television screen that she was squeezing her red ball rapidly. She requested a break. After the break, my daughter confirmed that the television falling was real and not a dream. She insisted that the television fell when her parents were still standing, but before 2009 she told everyone that the television fell after her father was on top of her mother. In the summer and autumn of 2008, she told everyone that she did not remember if her mother died on her stomach or on her back. And in October 2009, during the preliminary hearing, she still did not remember. When asked by Oliver if her mother died on her stomach or on her back, she replied that she was certain that she died on her back because it is easier to cover her mother's mouth if she is on her back. She was also positively certain that she saw the entire fight with her brother in front of the television in the living room. Oliver pointed out that she told Sergeant Patrick on the video recorded on June 25, 2008, that she did not remember many things because she only saw part of the fight. She had left the living room with her brother. She did not remember how long they were away from the living room. She testified that day that she never left the living room, even though she said so at the preliminary hearing in October 2009, where she testified that she came back to the living room after she heard her mother yelling for her to call 911. Oliver pointed to a drawing that my daughter made for one of Myrna's sessions where she is in the bedroom with her brother. She insisted that day that she did not remember seeing her mother on her stomach. She could not explain why or how her father's blood got onto the back of her mother's shirt, but she was certain that her mother died on her back. She saw her father move her mother into the bedroom on the rug and did not see him turn her body over. My daughter admitted again that she told everyone that she was shy because she did not want to talk to anyone about the fighting incident to strangers. She was afraid that she would get in trouble since she did not call 911. She testified that she thought that she was seeing Myrna several times to help tell a story, one which she tried telling with drawings and play therapy to deal with her feelings of sadness. She testified that she did not know why she remembered some things before she saw Myrna, but other things after seeing Myrna. She admitted that she did not want to talk about the fight because she was trying to forget. She testified that she followed me into the bedroom when I dragged her mother inside the rug there to see what I was going to do. Oliver tried to get my daughter to talk about her sessions with the licensed psychiatrist on December 3, 2008, but the prosecutor objected because they were hearsay evidence. The judge agreed. Oliver ended his cross-examination with my daughter since there was nothing else to ask her. My daughter was extremely happy that it was over. She smiled and said goodbye as she turned off the camera. My father and I were very happy and satisfied with the good job that Oliver did, but I was equally happy and hopeful that she would not have to go through that again. It is just too much for a child to go through such a terrible process regardless of how child-friendly they make it. Although the judge dismissed the jury for the day and instructed them to return the next day, she wanted to raise some concerns regarding Oliver's cross-examination with my daughter. She was very concerned with the hypothetical question regarding how my blood got onto the back of her mother's shirt. She felt that it was inappropriate to ask a child a hypothetical question since she was not mentally of age to be able to rightfully analyze and answer this type of question. Howard and Oliver quickly responded that the judge had to make a decision as to whether to treat my daughter as a child or as an adult. If she was to be treated as a child, then her testimony should not be treated as reliable evidence, and consequently the jury needed to be instructed not to use it in their deliberations. If she was to be treated as a reliable witness, then the hypothetical question that was asked is valid, and consequently her response to that question needed to be used as evidence during deliberations. The judge decided to give it more thought before making a decision. On Wednesday afternoon, word broke out in the Ottawa courthouse that prosecutor Jason Nickel, after 2 weeks of trial, had abandoned his criminal case against former Ottawa Carleton Regional Detention Center jail guard John Barbeau, a tall, big, and heavy Caucasian who was accused of stomping on the head of Jean-Paul Riom with his boots, an inmate that I had personally met while I was detained in 2008-2009 who was clearly developmentally delayed. Jean-Paul was handcuffed and shackled at the time of his beating. Barbeau, who I had seen eating donuts and drinking coffee in the dining area of the courthouse, was the only guard fired for the beating of Jean-Paul. Despite Barbeau's dismissal and Jean-Paul's physical injuries to his face, prosecutor Nicole stated in court that it would be unsafe to render a guilty verdict and abandoned his criminal case against Barbeau. The presiding judge, Ann Alder, confirmed in court that the prosecutor's decision to abandon the case was appropriate and concluded with integrity due to contradictory testimonies by witnesses. It should be noted that one of the defense attorneys on the case was the renowned Michael Edelson, who exposed the code of silence among the jail guards at the Ottawa Carleton Regional Detention Center. Edelson later told reporters that this case was one of the most offensive and disturbing things he had seen in his 38-year career as an attorney. On Friday, November 28, my co-attorney, Howard Krongold, was unable to be in court during my criminal trial because he had to be in Ontario Court of Appeal in Toronto to get Michael Sona released on bail pending his appeal for his conviction after having spent the first 12 nights of his 9-month sentence in Maplehurst Correctional Complex, a maximum security prison in Milton, Ontario. Sona was a former Conservative Party campaign worker who was convicted for his role in the deceptive Election Day automated telephone calls to around 7,000 registered Ontario voters in Guelph, where Sona directed non-Conservative supporters to the wrong polling stations. The following Monday, Sona's bail application was approved by Judge Harry Laforme, with bail set at $20,000 on the basis that Sona was unlikely to commit another criminal offense, the absence of judicial precedent in Canada for Sona's offense, and that Sona has endured considerable suffering. The fact that Sona would have served his jail sentence 15 months before his scheduled court date for his appeal on May 29, 2015, was also a factor in the judge's decision. Howard, who also planned on contesting the conviction, was hailed in various local and national news media. Although court was adjourned on Friday, November 28, the day was not entirely wasted, since the required court documents needed for the police to obtain Lien's medical records from Montreal was finally approved. Members of the Ottawa Police had used this day to travel and seize her health records from the Hotel Dieu Hospital. The records from the Montreal General Hospital were no longer available. Ontario's leading and head pathologist was scheduled to testify on this day, but ultimately it was decided to wait and allow him the opportunity to review Lien's health records from Montreal over the weekend. My criminal trial was adjourned and scheduled to resume on the following Monday, December 1, when the pathologist would return to Ottawa from his office in Toronto to testify at my retrial. I had overheard the prosecutor mention that the pathologist had requested that he be picked up at the airport by a professional chauffeur on Monday morning. It was Monday, December 1, and the morning in court was supposed to have started with the prosecutor playing the video recordings Lien made on June 7, 2008, and the 911 recording of my conversation with the emergency operator on June 8, 2008. The prosecutor and police investigator, Sergeant Patrick, who had just returned from his 2-week vacation from Puerto Rico, were unable to play the recordings for the jury due to technical difficulties with their laptop computers. Unable to fix the problem, Prosecutor Scott left the courtroom, swearing to see if she could find another working computer. When she returned shortly thereafter, she decided to postpone the playing of the recordings to the jury until later that afternoon, after the world-renowned chief forensic pathologist of Ontario, Dr. Michael Sven Polanin of Finnish descent, presented his findings in front of the jury. Dr. Christopher Milroy, an Anglo-Saxon originally from the United Kingdom who was working in Ottawa as the top local forensic pathologist for Eastern Ontario, was also present in the courtroom to hear Dr. Polanen's expert testimony. While waiting for the judge and jury to enter the courtroom, the prosecutor commented how she was exhausted and ready to collapse. She stated that she was happy that there were 2 doctors in the courtroom in case she did collapse. Dr. Milroy replied, "Wrong kind of doctors. If we're here, it's usually too late," triggering everyone to laugh out loud. After Dr. Polanen took his oath in front of the court, the prosecutor reviewed his credentials before questioning him about the pathology findings that he discovered and wrote in his forensic report. He testified he has been licensed with a medical degree from the University of Toronto since 1999 and that his job to investigate obscure and sudden unexpected deaths and other deaths of interest such as accidents, suicides, and homicides. He supervises and directs all pathologies in the province of Ontario, which on average is about 6,000 pathologies per year. He has provided international consulting in Baghdad, been a part of the United Nations-led mission in Cairo and the Canadian government-led mission in Algeria. He testified that he has reviewed publications of peers and has given lectures across Canada and abroad. Dr. Polanen testified that when Leanne's body arrived at the forensic facility in Toronto, it was already positioned on its back and placed in the autopsy room. His extensive and comprehensive autopsy resulted in an unascertained cause of death. Dr. Polanen testified that the photos of the body were taken by Sergeant Sean Rainville in the autopsy room. Dr. Polanen explained that the autopsy is the main tool for determining the cause of death and that there were 5 steps involved. The body is released to the family after the 3rd step. The autopsy examination continues via laboratory tests of the blood and tissue samples taken from the body. Dr. Polanen then testified that the cause of death is the thing that kills the person, whereas the mechanism of death explains how the cause of death killed the person. Lastly, the manner of death explains how the person died. Dr. Polanen explained that the manner of death is not really part of the forensic pathology and that this information comes from non-medical sources. He warned that experts need to be careful not to tread into the manner of death since this lies outside the scope of forensic pathology. Dr. Polanen testified in court that in the case with Leanne, he was unable to determine the cause of death and consequently has labeled the cause as unascertained. Similarly, he labeled the mechanism of death as unascertained as well. Dr. Polanen explained to the jury that there were 2 challenges involved with the mechanism of death concerning Leanne. First is the issue of asphyxia or anoxial death, where there is insufficient oxygen to the brain. This type of death is undetectable in a dead body and consequently does not present directly itself during the autopsy. The pathologist must look for inferences of asphyxia by looking for and analyzing neck wounds such as bruising, marks, injuries, and damages. Second is the issue of cardiac arrhythmia, or abnormal heartbeat, where there is an electrical dysfunction in the heart causing it to stop beating. There are no visible signs present during the autopsy since the heart is already dead and consequently cannot be measured. Again, the pathologist must look for other cardiac signs to infer the mechanism of death. The heart appears normal during the autopsy exam and therefore presents itself with unascertained results. During the pathologist's testimony in court, I noticed that jurors number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 11 appeared keenly interested in what Dr. Polanen was telling them. The pathologist continued his testimony in court by explaining the different mechanisms of asphyxia, obstruction of the nose and mouth, strangulation through the application of pressure on the neck, placing a plastic bag over a person's head, placing duct tape over the nose and mouth, restricting the movement of the chest, for example, being pinned by a vehicle or being stuck between the toilet and the bathtub, smothering by a pillow or soft surface, or any combination of the above. Dr. Polanin explained that very little time is needed to cause asphyxia. It typically occurs within minutes, but it can vary. The person generally loses consciousness very quickly, for example, from a blocked carotid artery done by applying continuous and sustained pressure to the neck. The person does not die if the pressure is released immediately after fainting. The pathologist testified that my daughter's testimony, after he read her transcript, is a possible explanation for an asphyxia death. In the case of arrhythmia, the person usually has a susceptibility or a pre-existing heart condition or heart conditions, such as hypertension or high cholesterol. During the autopsy, this appears as stress to the heart, caused either by physical or emotional stressors, or by an abnormally large heart or other physical abnormalities. Dr. Polanin testified that it had only been recently that the province of Ontario had started using emergency DNA tests on younger people suspected of having died from cardiac arrhythmia, and that these new tests were the result of the new forensic facility that was built in Toronto in June 2013. As I heard Dr. Polanin testify this in front of the jury, I could not help but think how once again the province of Ontario is lagging behind the rest of the country with its policies and procedures. Must Ontario always be a laggard? Dr. Polanin testified that he did not notice any heart defects or diseases either on Leanne's body or the medical records available to him, although he did note that she had hypertension during her last pregnancy, which did not appear to be life-threatening. The prosecutor immediately interrupted the pathologist's testimony so that he could hear the recordings of my 911 phone call to the emergency operator and my daughter's interrogation with Sergeant Patrick on June 2009 so that he could do a line-by-line analysis to determine whose testimony was more accurate. My attorney, Oliver, objected, stating that if the prosecutor wants the pathologist to do this, she should have sent the recordings ahead of time for the pathologist to review them before testifying in court. Oliver also argued that my 911 phone call was not a comprehensive account of what had happened and that it was a quick summary given to the operator to provide the basic story. The judge agreed and told the prosecutor that it was the jury's job to do the comparative analysis. The prosecutor became upset and emotional, citing unfairness at the refusal of her request, but eventually agreed that she should have given the recordings months before ahead of time. She apologized, admitted that she was in the wrong, and recanted her request. The judge decided that this was a good time to take a break and adjourn the court for morning recess. During the recess, my defense attorneys were consulting Dr. Milroy down the hall from the courtroom for his expert opinion on the testimony presented so far by Dr. Polanin. Meanwhile, I overheard the prosecutor guide Dr. Polanin on what to say next when he resumed testifying. After the morning recess, Dr. Polanin told the jury that both mechanisms of death were equally possible in the case of Leanne, whose autopsy was conducted on June 9, 2008. He testified that blood pooling occurs when the blood in the body settles downward due to gravity. He confirmed that the blood pooling in Leanne's face and body indicates that she was face down on her stomach and remained there either at the time of her death or immediately thereafter. The pathologist testified that he could not determine with 100% certainty what was the time of death, since the stiffness of the body, or rigor mortis, is not an accurate measure to determine specific time of death. When he received the body, Dr. Polanin testified that the body weighed 95 pounds, or 43 kilograms, and that it measured 4 feet and 9.5 inches, or 1.46 meters in length. Brown paper bags were placed over her hands to preserve the forensic evidence. She was not wearing panties, socks, or shoes, just her beige blouse and brown pants. She was wearing her wedding band on her left hand. I noticed again, for the second time, after I had seen the photos of the autopsy, that she was not wearing the wedding band that was placed on her right finger during our wedding, the way most Greeks wore their wedding ring. The ring that she was wearing on her left hand was her mother's, which she began wearing in 2001 after it was resized to fit her smaller finger. Dr. Polanin confirmed that she had capped teeth and other dental work done, as well as a scar from her cesarean section. He confirmed that her nails were not broken and that there were no lethal injuries. The pathologist testified that there were petechial hemorrhaging, small red or purple spots in the eyes caused by increased physiological pressure that can be caused by neck compression, chest compression, straining, and heart disease, the classic indicators pathologists see during autopsies, but they can also be caused by cardiac arrhythmias, which are non-classic indicators. Dr. Polanin reiterated that none of the injuries on the right hand, arms, leg, neck, and chest were lethal or life-threatening. There were no injuries on the left hand, but the blunt bruises and abrasions were likely caused by force applied to the hand while punching. The non-lethal injuries to the right hand were on her knuckles, also the result of punching. She did not suffer any broken bones or organ damage. The collection of bruises were indications of a struggle. The overwhelming majority of the bruising presented in the chest, collarbone, breastbone, and lower ribs were underneath the skin. Her bruises on her elbows were consistent with carpet burns. The bruising on the tip of her tongue was the result of biting, often associated with a seizure, but it is not a reliable indication of a specific cause of death since it is an unspecific injury. The pathologist saw some internal bleeding on the left side of the chest between the 9th and 10th rib and the top of the spine between the 3rd and 6th vertebrae caused by applied non-lethal pressure. He noticed indications of overextension of the neck, forward, backward, and side to side. There were no other injuries. The pathologist concluded that her death was not caused by any of her injuries. The pathologist testified that there was no evidence of organ disease from the laboratory results. The toxicology report did not reveal any positive findings to confirm any cause of death. Dr. Polanin testified that if the autopsy were conducted in 2013 or 2014, the results would have likely suggested that the cause of death was cardiac arrhythmia. Unfortunately, he did not keep any samples of the tissues to confirm or refute an arrhythmic death. He testified that he did an autopsy on a similar case in early 2014, which pointed to an arrhythmic death triggered by a rare genetic condition called Brugada syndrome. The condition is most commonly seen in Southeast Asians and causes sudden cardiac arrest. The judge adjourned the trial for lunch and instructed everyone to return in 1 hour. The defense attorneys spent their lunch hour with Dr. Milroy to continue their consultation with him for his expert opinion. My father and I spent the hour eating sandwiches at the cafe in the basement. Upon our return from the lunch break, Dr. Polanin resumed his testimony, this time reviewing and explaining my injuries. He testified that he did not examine me directly and that his analysis of my injuries is derived exclusively from the photos shown to him, which he used as reference during his testimony to the jury. The pathologist described the linear marks, abrasions, chafing, and intradermal injuries on the front of my face, on the right side of my face, on my jaw, on the base of my neck, on my shoulders, on the right side of my torso, on the left side of my torso, and on my chest. He identified the abrasion on my left knee as an injury consistent with carpet burn. He then proceeded to the photos of my penis, where he explained that the injuries to the head of the penis were caused by a combination of blunt force and bruising, abrasions, and lacerations, most likely from Leanne's nails. He confirmed that the blood under Leanne's nails were mine. The pathologist testified that the prosecutor's hypothesis that I straddled and smothered Leanne is a possible cause of death, but only if I had obstructed her nose and mouth with my hand, as opposed to some kind of physical contact or touch of the mouth with my hand, which would not have caused her to die. Dr. Polanin clearly confirmed that there was no physical, definitive evidence of obstruction of the nose and mouth by a hand or other object or body part. There were no marks or bruising on her mouth. After the prosecutor ended her interrogation and thanked the pathologist, I immediately noticed that juror number 2 did not look happy and actually appeared dissatisfied with Dr. Polanin's responses to Prosecutor Scott's questions. He quickly turned away after I had caught him glancing at me. The judge adjourned the court for a quick recess, which my defense attorneys quickly used to consult Dr. Milroy, the local pathologist that we had hired as an expert consultant for my criminal trial. After our recess was over, Oliver quickly resumed the trial with his cross-examination of Dr. Polanin. Dr. Polanin confirmed that the petechial hemorrhaging in Leanne's eyes could be the result of Leanne straining to push and or lift something or someone heavier than her, such as myself. He also reiterated that the pooling of blood in Leanne's body definitely confirmed that she either died face down on her stomach or was turned over onto her stomach immediately after she died. The pathologist confirmed that the bloodstains on the front and back of Leanne's blouse came from my penis. Dr. Polanin testified that the technical tools used in Ontario since 2013 are more extensive and thus able to provide additional factual information regarding cardiac arrhythmias during autopsies than the tools used in 2008 when the autopsy was done on Leanne's body. Still, Dr. Polanin explained that even then he could not confirm or guarantee with 100% certainty that if Leanne's autopsy were done today, that the tools would yield definitive answers. Her medical history of fainting points to a genetic predisposition of heart disease, as does her family history, both of which could increase the chances of sudden death. He also testified that if Leanne had survived, she would likely only have suffered a sore neck. He reiterated in front of the jury that smothering was not the cause of death and that there were no physical signs in the mouth or throat to indicate otherwise. There were no signs that duct tape was used to cover the nose or mouth. No residue from the tape was found. He explained that the classic signs of smothering were abrasive friction marks on the mouth, pattern of tears around and inside the mouth and cheeks, and injuries to the lips. He testified that these signs of smothering are always evident in healthy and vigorous adults between the ages of 2 and 60. Dr. Polanin confirmed that my story of events is consistent with the findings of the forensic evidence, which strongly suggests that she died of cardiac arrhythmia, particularly if she was briefly alive before she died. Death from asphyxia occurs immediately due to sustained pressure on the chest or back, as commonly seen when police officers apprehend suspects while arresting them with their hands behind their back. If Leanne spoke before she died, that means that she was not asphyxiated. The pathologist argued in front of the jury that the prosecutor's theory that I smothered Leanne while Leanne was lying on the floor does not match the forensic evidence, since the floor acts as a barrier and would prevent me from extending Leanne's neck beyond its normal position, and consequently the hyperextension marks on Leanne's neck could only be caused by her extending her neck forward, likely when she was trying to push me off of her. The pathologist reiterated again that the forensic results from 2008 indicated that Leanne either died of asphyxia or cardiac arrhythmia, and that although there are links between the two, it is typically one or the other that caused her death. Before ending his cross-examination with Dr. Polanin, my attorney Oliver asked the pathologist if he knew Dr. Milroy, who was sitting in the courtroom behind me, my two offense attorneys, the prosecutor, and the investigative police officers, throughout Dr. Polanin's testimonies. Dr. Polanin admitted that he knew Dr. Milroy and testified that Dr. Milroy was his unofficial deputy for Eastern Ontario, a very qualified and respected pathologist who is both a good colleague and frequent advisor for second opinions. Dr. Polanin admitted that he was aware that Dr. Milroy had reviewed his autopsy results and report on Leanne's death and had read Dr. Milroy's own report critiquing Dr. Polanin's autopsy findings on Leanne. Oliver thanked Dr. Polanin for his testimony and ended his cross-examination with the pathologist. Dr. Polanin was excused from court by the judge and was driven to the airport to catch his flight to Toronto by Dr. Milroy, who himself was scheduled to leave Ottawa for Liverpool, England, the next night to attend his son's graduation ceremony. Our original plan was to have Dr. Milroy testify the next day to present his own expert opinion before he left for Liverpool, but after much discussion with my attorneys, they concluded that this was no longer necessary since Dr. Milroy's presence in the courtroom during Dr. Polanen's testimony compelled Dr. Polanen to testify honestly and objectively. Consequently, having Dr. Milroy testify would not add anything more of value to my criminal trial. My attorneys felt that it was best to move the trial forward than to dawdle the flow of the trial with another day of forensic testimony, which repeated the same exact thing that Dr. Polanen had already testified in court. Having Dr. Milroy write his own report reviewing Dr. Polanen's work and coming to sit in the courtroom during Dr. Polanen's testimony was an ingenious idea. I had learned from my studies at the University of Ottawa that this is a common strategy used in the field of medicine to either ensure that physicians, who are for the most part unaccountable to anyone outside their profession, remain honorable and professional during their practice, since doing otherwise would result in severe criticism and loss of respect from their peers. Accountability. The only downside to not having Dr. Milroy testify was that I now had to testify in front of the jury one day earlier. Trepidation. To make matters worse, my father was pestering me by telling me what to say during my testimony in front of the jury. He was acting like he was a director of a theatrical play, something that I did not agree with. If Leanne's lover Ali wants to put on a show for the jury about his heartache, and if Prosecutor Scott wants to pour on the drama to entice the jury to entertain the judge, then that is their prerogative. I refuse to stoop to their level by acting like someone that I am not. Genuineness. My stance on refusing to put on a theatrical show angered my father, who called me naive, foolish, inexperienced, etc. He wanted me to listen to him for the simple fact that he was 80 years old and fully experienced. He commanded divine respect and unconditional obedience. I reminded him that although his name means gift from God, he was no God. He was human, a man who has made several mistakes in his life, which is normal, but kept repeating the same mistakes, which is unacceptable. Yes, my father had years of life experience, but clearly he had not learned anything from those 80 years of life experience. I also told my father that although he had 35 years more life experience than me, his advice on life was outdated. The world had changed incredibly in the previous 2 decades, and consequently the old rules of life no longer were respected and no longer functioned. I reminded him, using the same words he had stated in the past, that the people in today's world are shit, and just because they were all engaged in the game of shit did not mean that I had to engage in games of shit. My father did not agree with me, and he continued to butt heads with me until the morning of the next day when I was scheduled to testify in court. Needless to say, he was not fully satisfied with the way that I had testified because it lacked oomph. But then, after Howard told him that I testified really well, my father suddenly complimented me and even admitted to me that even members of the older generation can learn a thing or two from the younger generations. Predictable. My father always changed his positions. First, he believed that all older people should be obeyed unconditionally. Next, he said that older people could learn a thing or two from younger ones. When I challenged him on his inconsistency, he became philosophical and started babbling away in ancient Greek just to say one simple thing: old doctors and young lawyers. I suppose he was the old doctor and Howard was the young lawyer, and I wasn't either, so I got no respect. Anyway, on the morning of December the 2nd, 2008, I was summoned to testify and prove my innocence before a jury composed of 8 men and 4 women who ultimately were going to decide my fate. Needless to say, I did not get much sleep that night, not that I would have, since I only had arrived at home from the offices of my defense attorney at 1 o'clock in the morning after an intense brainstorming session with them and their junior partners. We would all find out if that intense 5-hour session was going to pay off. Before I was summoned to the front of the court to testify, the prosecutor and investigative police officers had played the recording of my phone call to the 911 emergency operator on June 8, 2008, where I had explained what had happened that morning. After I swore on the Bible to take my oath in front of the jury, I sat down, took a deep breath, listened carefully, and tried my best to remain calm, even though I was extremely anxious and tense. My defense attorney, Oliver, began by asking me background information about my origins, my academic and professional accomplishments, and my 16 years of marriage, including our brief marriage counseling sessions. I had testified that my licensing qualifications as a nurse, including my cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR training, had expired in 1997, 11 years prior to my arrest in 2008. I testified that in 2001, during one of our marriage counseling sessions with Dr. Nancy Smith, I began suspecting that Leanne was having an extramarital affair, although she continued to deny having one when I asked her. I testified that over the years my suspicions remained until I received confirmation from our daughter in October 2004 after she told me upon my return from a business trip that her mother brought a man home. Leanne still denied the other man's existence, but I decided that I was not going to fight over this issue nor divorce Leanne since she was 1 month away from giving birth to our son. I told the court that aside from this matter, things were still functioning fine at home and that there were not any other contentious issues. I testified that I had never responded violently about Leanne's infidelity. I also testified that I received further confirmation from one of the women at my church on December 2005 that she had seen my wife with another man on the west side of the city near the Bayshore shopping mall. I had responded that I had already known and accepted the reality of it. I testified that even though Leanne was still denying it, I did not respond by finding out who he was or where he lived, nor did I hire a private detective to do so for me. I testified that I had adopted a don't ask, don't tell policy about her infidelity. I testified that I had received a peculiar phone call during the day at home in 1998 when Leanne had started working for a small computer company at Bell's Corners. From Ali's older brother Kareem in Montreal, Kareem was looking for Ali, who had suddenly disappeared from Montreal. He was looking for Ali because he owed him some money. I told the jury that after I had asked Kareem why he was phoning me in Ottawa, Kareem had replied that my phone number has appeared several times on his long-distance phone bill, so he thought that he would phone me to see if Ali was there. I told Kareem that to my knowledge, Ali was not in Ottawa. I also testified that Leanne denied knowing where Ali was after I had told her about the phone call from Kareem. Again, I confirmed in court that I had never screamed or yelled at Leanne, nor had I ever responded violently. I testified that on April 4, 2008, Leanne started an argument with me about the MasterCard credit card bill on the way to the bus stop on Carling Avenue after we had dropped off our daughter at school. She wanted to know why the credit card statement had not arrived yet. It seemed that regardless of how I responded, it was not good enough for Leanne, and consequently she boarded her bus angrily and without saying goodbye to me or our son, who were waiting for another bus to take us to our son's preschool. I confirmed in court that Leanne and I were both salaried employees earning nearly the same amount of money and that my income went to pay the daily and monthly living expenses while her income was used for her investments, the children's savings, and other things that she wanted to spend her money on. I testified that I did not hide any money from my biweekly paychecks or hide my credit card statements from her, and that in reality I did not have much money left to spend on myself. What little that I had, I spent on a few DVDs a year, a couple of CDs a year, and a couple of graphic novels a year. I also saved a little money to spend on gifts for Leanne and the children for special occasions. I testified that on April 4, 2008, Leanne did not come home after work that evening, nor did she want to speak to me via the phone, but she spoke to our daughter and told her that Mommy is not coming home tonight. I testified that this was bizarre, but that this was not the first time she had done this. She had done this once before in 2001, just before her mother died. I testified that on the next day, Leanne had phoned me on my cell phone while I was hall monitor with our son at our daughter's Greek Saturday school to tell me to return home and wait for her so that she could take our son. I testified that I was concerned because although Leanne had spent the night elsewhere before, she had never phoned me to say that she was now coming to take our son away. Still, I returned home after our daughter's class and had pushed the sofa behind the door as an added precaution. I told the court that I did not want to get in contact with Leanne because I did not know what she was thinking or if she was coming alone or not. Since she did not come home from work the previous night, she may very well have been on her way home with her boyfriend. I testified that I also began phoning lawyers to seek advice on what to do if Leanne arrived with someone to take our son away. A lawyer who answered her cell phone that day informed me to phone the police if I felt scared for my safety or the safety of the children. I told the jury that about 3 hours later, Leanne arrived at the door of the apartment, but she could not enter because of the sofa that was against the door. I removed the sofa once I saw that she was alone. Leanne was angry that I placed the sofa against the door, but she was still calm. She insisted that she take our son with her without telling me where or with whom or for how long. Leanne became angry, then pulled out her cell phone to start dialing. She told the person on the phone that she needed him to come immediately because she needed help. I responded by dialing 911 to seek help from the police because I did not know what to expect from all of this. I told the jury that I had explained to the emergency operator what was happening, and she told me to phone the police directly because my call was not urgent. I did as instructed, and while I was on the phone with the policewoman, Ali walked through the door of my apartment. I recognized him immediately as Leanne's former laboratory partner, even though I had last seen him about 13 years before at Concordia University in Montreal. I relayed all this information to the policewoman on the phone, and I specifically told her that my wife is here with her boyfriend and that they are here to take away our son. I told the jury that while I was on the phone with the policewoman, Ali came inches or centimeters away from my face and ordered me to back away from my son, who was standing behind me, so that he could take him away. Ali then ordered Leanne to get the passports. In my mind, I was thinking they were obviously planning on going somewhere out of the country. I testified that the policewoman on the phone instructed me to leave the apartment alone and wait for the police to arrive in the main lobby of the building. I waited in the lobby as instructed, and Constable DiNardo finally arrived 35 minutes after I hung up the phone with the policewoman. I testified that after I told Constable DiNardo what was happening, we had returned to the apartment on the 5th floor where Leanne, Ali, the 2 children, and Constable Sharma were standing around. Eventually, the police officers left. Ali left, and Leanne, the children, and I were left alone in the apartment. I testified that I did not get into a physical altercation with Ali or Leanne that evening, nor did I ever yell or scream at either of them. I testified that I was not shocked that there was another man in Leanne's life, but I was caught off guard when I saw that it was Ali. I testified that in the end it did not change anything, although I did admit to the jury that I was not happy that the extramarital affair had started so early in our marriage, but the only thing that really changed, and that was of no concern to me, was my safety and that of the children. I testified that I responded to this unsafe situation by seeing my priest, Father Alex, and that was when I decided to divorce. Between our visits to Father Alex and June 8, 2008, I had never argued, shouted, yelled, screamed, or got physically violent with Leanne over her extramarital affair with Ali. I confirmed in court that I had never hit a woman in my life. I testified that although we consulted lawyers at roughly the same time, my lawyer ended up serving Leanne the divorce papers first. Although Father Alex offered us the opportunity for reconciliation during our session with him in his office, Leanne made it clear that she was not interested in reconciliation. I testified that in court that I also made it clear in writing, via my lawyer, that I wanted a family assessment to be conducted on the children and to have temporary custody of the children while waiting for the final results of the assessment. I testified that it was Leanne and her lawyer who had first proposed that the family assessment be conducted. I confirmed that Leanne and her lawyer changed their mind and retracted their position about the family assessment, which was the reason why my lawyer had to subpoena Leanne to go to court for July 8, 2008. I testified that I wanted to respect the process and proceed in a civilized and peaceful manner. I testified that on June 6, 2008, I was informed by my lawyer that Leanne had changed her mind again and was willing to undergo the family assessment again willingly. I testified that I thanked my lawyer for compelling Leanne to do the right thing and that I was happy that things were going to proceed via the appropriate process. I testified that I was not upset about or scared of the family assessment because I did not have anything to be afraid about. I knew that despite being a man, I had a higher than average chance of getting custody of the children, at worst 50% of the time, and at best more than 50% of the time, and if the process to determine custody was respected, because I was the parent who had done most of the parenting. I testified that the home environment had gotten considerably worse and unbearable since Leanne was subpoenaed on March 28 to go to court on July 8, 2008. Leanne began using her digital camera at that time to record anything that she thought or felt would help her prove that I was a bad parent. I testified that at first our daughter and I ignored her, but she escalated and intensified her actions more aggressively on June 6, 2008, to the point of bothering our daughter. I testified that I spoke to Angela Rowland at the office on the afternoon of June 6, 2008, and told her how much I dreaded being home on the weekends because of Leanne's behavior. I told Angela that I did not have any other options than to stay at home because I did not have any other place to go since all of my income went to paying for the apartment and the children's expenses. I testified that I did not receive any bad news between June 6 and June 8, 2008, nor did I get into any argument with Leanne since we were no longer on speaking terms. I testified that the Sunday of June 8, 2008 was supposed to be a usual Sunday with plans to go to church, especially since the service at church was going to be followed by Sunday school graduation, which our daughter was going to take part in. It was supposed to be an enjoyable day and a good break and valid excuse to be away from the hostile environment at home. I testified that Leanne was not planning on coming with the children or me, and that it was very rare that she came to church with us on Sundays. The children and I were going to celebrate afterwards by seeing a movie and eating pizza. I described in court that the morning of June 8, 2008 began like any other normal day. Our son woke up first and came to me to wake me up at 5:30 a.m. so that I could feed him breakfast. I testified that Leanne woke up around 7:30 a.m., which was unusual since she typically stayed in bed late on Sunday mornings. I noticed that Leanne had her camera within easy reach, ready to use at a moment's notice. She did not touch her camera until after I woke our daughter at around 8:30 a.m. Our daughter went to the bathroom so she could shower and get ready for church. I had turned on the water for her in the shower, and then I went into the kitchen. I had seen Leanne sitting on the couch with our son, but shortly afterwards, while I was in the kitchen, I heard a loud conversation coming from the bathroom. I went to see what the commotion was about and saw Leanne holding up her camera at the doorway of the bathroom while our daughter was telling her repeatedly, "No, Mommy, no." I managed to pass Leanne at the doorway to stand in between her and our daughter. For the first time in about 7 weeks, I spoke directly to Leanne and told her, "Please, that is enough." She said no. I had to repeat myself a few times before Leanne decided to walk away. This gave our daughter the time and privacy she needed to get out of the shower and start getting dressed. I had gone into the master bedroom to change into my clothes for church, since my clothes were still there even though I was sleeping on the couch. When I heard our daughter tell her mother no again in the living room, our daughter was getting ready to put on her Sunday dress, which was in the living room. I was at that time only wearing my boxer shorts. As I approached the living room, it became more apparent to me that Leanne was trying to force our daughter to rehearse what to say for the family assessment. Our daughter did not want to, and consequently, this angered Leanne. I testified that my lawyer and I did not know with certainty why Leanne and her lawyer had changed their mind about the family assessment, but we suspect that it was because they had realized that they could not escape having an assessment done on the children. In our minds, Leanne did not want to really have an assessment done, but accepted on June 6, 2008, that an assessment was going to be done whether she liked it or not. I testified that I tried to separate our daughter from Leanne without touching Leanne by putting my arm outstretched in between them. Our daughter was sitting on the couch, and Leanne was squatting in front of her, both at each other's eye level. Leanne was badgering our daughter and trying to get her to repeat the things Leanne wanted her to say during the assessment. Leanne then told me to back off and mind my own business. When I refused and moved forward anyway, she lunged her nails into my groin. I felt the sharp pain and instinctively pushed her off me. I did not expect her to do that, despite having told me a couple of times during our marriage that if I pissed her off long enough, that she would cut my penis off. But I did not think that she would do it. I never gave her reason to do such a thing. In fact, Leanne and I had never fought before. Her actions on that Sunday morning were unexpected and extremely shocking. When I pushed her off, she was still squatting but had fallen onto her buttocks. It was only enough force to push her off of me so that she could stop hurting me. Pushing her off of me seemed to make her even more angry, and she quickly got back onto her feet again. She immediately began charging towards me with the intention to scratch my face, but I tried to dodge her. I only partially succeeded, and she managed to sink her nails into my lip. I was unsure if she did contact the rest of my face at that time, but my immediate reaction was to get her onto the floor. I testified that I had never gotten into a fight before with anybody, nor did I receive any training in boxing or martial arts. In high school, I was the geek that got bullied. I testified that I never expected that Leanne would resort to using violence and that I was unprepared for it. To end the violence quickly, I got her onto the floor, but I do not remember how I did it since everything happened so quickly. What I do remember was that I fell onto the floor with her. Leanne ended up on her back, and I ultimately managed to sit on top of her with my legs on either side of her hips as I tried to pin her arms down to restrain her, because in my mind she still wanted to fight. She seemed very angry, straining and using all of her force, and even making these grunting and guttural sounds, similar to growling but with her jaw clenched shut, which were coming from her throat. As she was exerting herself to attack me, I was trying to pin her arms down, but with little success at first. She kept breaking free of my grasp, but eventually I succeeded in pinning her left arm to the floor, which restricted her attacks to her right arm, which she was using repeatedly to scratch me and even punch me. I remember that at some point she pulled and tore the crucifix from my neck, breaking the chain. I testified in court that I kept telling her to stop, but it did not seem to matter to her that I was repeatedly pleading with her to stop. She would not stop. It was as if I was speaking another language, which she did not understand. I could not get through to her. She kept ignoring me. I firmly confirmed in court that I did not punch her or strangulate her or smother her. I had never covered her mouth the way the prosecutor insistently argues that I did to stop her from breathing, nor did I put my hands around her neck. My hands never touched her neck. Why would I? I testified that not once did Leanne say or do anything to indicate that she could not breathe, and in fact she kept intensifying her attacks on my face, neck, and chest while I straddled her hips. I did not remember her attacking my upper body or flank, and only noticed the attack marks afterwards. Ultimately, I succeeded in pinning down her right arm after she had previously and repeatedly broken free from my grasp. After I had pinned down both of her arms, I thought the fight was going to be over, but I was wrong. Leanne managed to curl up her legs upwards and use them to kick me and lunge me off of her in the direction of the 27-inch Sony tube television located probably 3 feet or 1 meter away to my right. Bang! My body hit the television with such a huge force that it fell off the television stand and landed onto the floor on its side. I remember thinking, and probably saying out loud, "Holy shit," as I was flung over onto the television and landed on the floor on my side. While I was on the floor, I looked up and noticed that Leanne was back on her feet, unsure of what she was going to do next as she came towards me. I sprung back onto my feet with the intention of getting Leanne back on the floor again to try and restrain her again because I did not want to fight. In fact, I wanted this fight to end as soon as possible. I testified that when we both landed on the floor, I did not remember if Leanne had landed on her back first or on her side or immediately onto her stomach. All I remembered was thinking to myself that I had to get her onto her stomach this time so that she would not be able to kick me off again. Next thing that I remember was that she was on her stomach with me sitting on her back again with my legs on either side of her hips, but this time holding her arms behind her back. I was still trying to talk her into stopping, but she kept ignoring me. I could not get through to her as she kept resisting me, trying to buck me off her back. It was about this time that Leanne had told our daughter to phone 911, the police. I saw our daughter go and grab the cordless phone, and she was trying to figure out how to turn it on. Normally, I turned the phone on for her by pressing the talk button before she wanted to use it. I had never thought of teaching her how to turn the phone on before, and so now she was looking at the buttons, trying to figure out which button to press to get the dial tone. I was trying to tell our daughter, no, use the other phone, because I knew that our daughter would not have any problems getting the dial tone. The other phone in the master bedroom was a normal corded telephone where you pick up the phone and you get a dial tone. Suddenly, I saw her drop the cordless phone onto the love seat, shouting, "No, no," to her little brother as she ran to him and pulled him away from us. He had gotten dangerously close to me and his mother, and as a result, his sister was pulling him away from the living room. I saw the children leave the living room while I was still sitting on their mother's back. Leanne was still resisting me, still trying to buck me off and still ignoring my calls to stop. She was still breathing and still alive. She finally stopped resisting me and agreed to stop struggling, telling me clearly, yes, I'll stop. Get off of me." I confirmed again in front of the jury that I had never punched her, strangulated her, or suffocated her by putting my hand over her mouth to stop her from breathing. Before I could continue testifying, the prosecutor suddenly stood up to object to the questions asked by my attorney. The judge overruled her objection and allowed me to continue. Again, I firmly told the court that I did not touch her neck, nor did I extend her head forward or backward while I was sitting on her back. In fact, I immediately released her arms after she agreed to stop and told me to let go of her, and I stood up and got off of her. I am 100% certain that she was alive after I had gotten off of her because she was still breathing. I saw movements of her chest and her arms, and I heard her utter a few words, although I was uncertain what she said because she was mumbling. I know that I did not do anything that would have caused her to die or put her at risk of dying. I never had any intention of hurting her, nor did I ever want her to die. My main intention and focus were to restrain her, nothing more. The next thing that I remember doing while standing above her was taking my eyes off Leanne to quickly look and see where the children were. I looked around the room and saw the television on its side, then got a glance at my groin and blood-stained underwear. I looked back at Leanne and suddenly realized that she was not breathing. Her upper body was not moving, nor was she moving at all. Panic. Suddenly I was thinking, "Oh God, she is dead, she is dead." I was freaking out because I could not understand what the hell just happened. I was overwhelmed and completely unprepared for that. That was when our son came back running into the living room shouting, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." He touched her body, but she did not respond. I remember touching her as well, but she was still unresponsive, which further confirmed in my mind that she was dead. My immediate reaction was to stop him from touching the body to get him away, and to prevent him from seeing more than he had already seen. So I took both ends of the rug and folded them over to hide her from his view as best I could. but he insists on seeing and touching his mother, so he unfolds the flaps. I had to pull him away, refold the two ends of the rug on top of her, then pull the entire rug with her body inside to the master bedroom and close the door to stop him from seeing and touching her. I did not remember when exactly our daughter came into the living room, but all I knew was that I had to get Leanne's body out of there and away from the children to stop the panicked reactions.